Hello and welcome to Wellbeing Warrior Monthly Live. Today it's the 7th of February. Love is in the air. I'm super excited. It's Valentine's Day coming up soon, so if you haven't bought your Valentine's card, make sure you do. So today we're going to talk about the risk factors associated with cognitive decline. So this is reduction in your memory capacity in particular. And we're also going to talk about how you can really reduce those risk factors. In particular, I'm going to be drawing from the work done by Dr. Daniel Amen and his team in the States, and in particular using some information from the book called Memory Rescue. If you haven't got it, it's a great book. Do get it. Also, they've published a recent study with regards to a massive scan on brain aging, and I'll talk a little bit about that. How to reduce the risk factors, what you can really do, and there's a great mnemonic that they've produced, and I'll go through that mnemonic and the steps that you can really take to reduce your risk factors and make sure that you look after your brain and that you have the best brain that you can have even as you age. You're not stuck with the brain you have. You can make it better. You can improve your brain. So if you are on that slippery slope of losing your memory, there are steps that you can really take to slow down the effects of cognitive decline and really help yourself reduce your risk of Alzheimer's and dementia that could occur in the future. And then finally, looking at courage. How can you really show up as your authentic self? In particular, I note that many of my clients often struggle with being their authentic self. It's something that's a real struggle for people in this day and age. And I think it's because of the pressures that society puts on us that we feel that we have to be someone that we're not. And the best thing is to be a first-rate version of yourself rather than a second-rate version of someone else. So we'll go through how you can build greater courage to really be the person that you want to be. So what are the risk factors associated with cognitive decline? Well, before we dive into that, what I want to think about is this diagram on the left here. So there's two things that we look at: your activity, the level of activity that you've got in your brain, how active you are, how cognitively astute you are, and also your age is on the x-axis, the y-axis is activity. And what we're particularly interested in is making sure that you build enough for brain reserve for the future. And we know that as you get older, the cognitive activity declines, and you'll start seeing symptoms of cognitive impairment and move into that kind of troubled zone. And the key thing here is to really make sure that you look after your brain so that you build that brain reserve and avoid getting the symptoms that indicate brain trouble. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to kind of get some brain envy going on. And the way that they do that in the Amen clinics is they image brains, and you can look at the scan of a healthy brain, which is a nice, smooth picture in three-dimensional, looking at the surface morphology of the brain. An unhealthy brain generally tends to have lots of holes in it, depending on what's actually happened in your brain, showing a decrease in blood flow to that particular area of the brain. So you really want to get brain envy. That's the first thing. You then need to have a reason. You need to get motivated behind looking after your brain. Now, my motivation is Lily. I want to have the best brain I can have for my future and for her future so that I can really be around for a long time. What is your motivation to get in the best brain shape that you can? Next of all, we really need to avoid the things that hurt our brain, the bad things that are not going to help us keep that brain reserve that we need to sustain throughout our life. And finally, we need to do the things that help our brain to do good, to make sure that we're looking after it and boosting that brain reserve so that we're delaying those symptoms that are indicative of Alzheimer's disease, for example. In fact, there are now 4 levels of indicating progression into Alzheimer's disease, and the second level in particular, first one is normal, the second level is indicative of cognitive decline in your brain without actually presenting any symptoms. And they know from studies in the States that if you can catch it early, then you can do something about it and affect the outcome that you may have, reduce those risks. So what particularly indicates trouble? Well, if your brain, if you can remember less than you could less than 10 years ago, if your energy is low, if your mood is low, if you're much more irritable than you used to be, if you have a noticeable increase in anxiety, stress and worry, or you've had that for much of your life, your attention span is shortened, you start to feel that kind of brain fog, you're more impulsive, you make bad decisions, you have issues with sleep, insomnia, you have high blood pressure, you may have high blood sugar levels, you're struggling with your weight, so weight issues, any sexual dysfunction, and then something that's you're not complying with your health requirements based on any issues that you have, any drugs, you're not taking your drugs, for example. Now, when they did this study, this recent study that's just being published in the very short term through the Amen clinics and multitude of universities in the States, UCLA is one of them, they scanned 62,454 brains using SPECT imaging to understand what specific factors drives brain aging, and they looked at 128 different regions of the brain. And there's several key factors here that are clinically proven to reduce or age your brain faster. Now, not all of these are applicable, but it's a really insightful study, and it puts to question some of the interventions that are being done medically to help people deal with stress and anxiety, for example. So the first one that causes the greatest brain aging is schizophrenia. And interestingly, the second one, with 2.8 years increased brain aging compared to the norm, is cannabis abuse. And obviously they're now legalizing the use of cannabis medically to help people deal with certain issues, and that's really kind of questionable as to whether that's going to help people in the long term, and they've obviously scientifically proved that it will age your brain, quite significant aging there. Bipolar disorder increases your age of the brain by 1.6 years. ADHD or ADD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, increases the age of your brain by 1.4 years. And that's really significant because quite a lot of people suffer from ADD, and if you don't treat it early and if you're not taking the right supplements to help you manage your condition, then you'll obviously have a risk of increased brain aging. And finally, alcohol abuse leads to an increase in your brain age of 0.6 years. Now, this will be the average of people, so you could have a significant increase in your brain age depending on the condition you have, based on that Gaussian distribution that there will be in the study. So the question is, what are the major risk factors that result in cognitive decline? Now, we know in terms of Alzheimer's disease, it is expected to triple in the next 30 years, and there is currently no known cure for it. So it's incumbent upon ourselves to really make sure, given there's no cure, given the ageing population, given the pressure on the health services, given the increased stress in society, in the workplace, that we do what is necessary to reduce the risk associated with Alzheimer's disease. And indeed, 50% of people over the age of 85 years old will have Alzheimer's, some form of Alzheimer's disease. So what are the major risk factors? The first one, and there are several, is depression. Have you suffered from depression in the past? Are you feeling like you're suffering from depression, or perhaps moving into that zone of a depressed state? It's really important that we take back control of our health here and reduce the effect that depression has on ourselves, and tackle the root cause of depression and seek to fix that so that we can reduce that risk associated with cognitive decline. Second one is obesity. That's a major risk factor in terms of cognitive decline, and we know that a vast majority of the population now in the UK is obese. 30%, I believe it is, in the US is obese, and that situation is continuing. It's not being helped by the ads that we have on television for children, the ads that are out on TV for adults, the increase in fast food, the propensity to see sugar as a luxury and as a nice food to have, rather than seeing it as something that's really bad for you. So massively on the rise. Is going to be a major issue in the future, and there already is a burden on the NHS, and that really has a big risk on your cognitive cognition. And in fact, they know, we call it the dinosaur syndrome. The heavier you are, they've done multiple studies on this now, the heavier you are, the smaller your brain actually decreases in size, and the blood flow to your brain also decreases. So if you don't want to become a dinosaur, if you don't want to be extinct, really make sure that you focus on losing any weight that you have. Diabetes, so this combined is called diabesity. Another major risk factor associated with cognitive decline, and this is associated with the sugar levels that we have that will impact the blood flow to our brain. So it's really important that that is brought under control. High blood pressure, another major risk factor. So if you are suffering from high blood pressure, do make sure that you are taking the necessary medication, that keeping your diet under control, reducing the amount of sugars that you intake to keep that blood pressure down. Brain trauma, and I think this is a hugely interesting area, because I counted up that I've actually had 13, I think it was, brain trauma incidents in my life. One of the earliest ones was falling over the handlebars of my bike when I was a child, being chased by another kid, and multiple ones since then, either on a bike or on skis or something else. So that can really affect your brain function and can cause cognitive impairment. So it's really important that you look after your brain, and if you have had a brain trauma, that you take the steps to treat it. Another classic is your peer group. So who you socialise with really affects how well your brain will do. If you're socialising with an unhealthy peer group, whether that's a peer group that is constantly depressed, a peer group that is constantly negative, or a peer group that is actually pretty obese or certainly overweight, then you are likely to adopt the habits. We just know that from social science, that you will adopt the habits that sit within that peer group. So the best thing to do is to find the fittest person that you can stand and hang out with them, or certainly the fittest group of people you can stand and hang out with them. And it's kind of interesting, Dr. Daniel Amen talks about the fact that the church is a place to help heal people spiritually, but frequently it's the church that provides the cakes and the sweets that actually does your brain harm as a reward for fundraising, for example. So they're basically sending you to heaven early, and I'm not sure that is their intention. So it's really important that you look at the groups that you're socializing with, look at what you're eating in that group, and seek to find the right group that will really help you with your brain health. And another one is your exposure to toxins. This includes mold, this includes paint fumes, anything that you've been exposed to in the environment that actually can cause significant reduction in blood flow in your brain. And they know that painters can have quite a toxic brain, and that will include smoking as well, cannabis, anything that you are putting into your body that is toxic. So the key thing here is, what will also hurt your brain is if you have a low omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, so you're not taking on enough omega-3 in your body, EPA and DHA. Now DHA, type of omega-3, makes up a massive part of your brain, and it is in fact something that is encouraged to be taken for those people that are breastfeeding, like myself, to help your child with their cognitive development. So it's really important that you make sure that you have the right balance of omega-3 in your brain to reduce the risk of inflammation. Low hormones, we're also looking at lack of activity, so a lack of exercise. We've talked about insomnia, that also affects you. Any nicotine or caffeine will really hurt your brain. Emotional trauma will have an impact on your brain. Poor decision making, which we talked about a little bit earlier in this section here. And also really not knowing your brain vulnerability. So it's important that we take cognizance of what it is that we need to do to protect our brain based on how we've already looked after it. And you can learn all of that in the book Memory Rescue, and hopefully you'll learn some of that today. So lots of risk factors associated with cognitive decline. And it's really important, have a think about any of these ones. Have any of those come to mind as risk factors for you? Maybe write them down and think about the factors that are going to be affecting your brain. Have you had anything associated with trouble in terms of your brain health, including low energy, low mood, irritability, anxiety, stress, worry? What are the factors that are really affecting you? What are your risk factors associated with your brain that could lead to cognitive decline based on what I've just been talking about? Make sure you write those down. So the next part is to really talk about how can you really reduce the risk of cognitive decline. And in the Memory Rescue book, they talk about the mnemonic bright minds, and I'm going to go through that one now. And it's a really good mnemonic to think about, and there's lots of steps you can take to really help your brain. And as I said, you're not stuck with the brain that you have. You can improve it, you can turn it around. So the first mnemonic is blood flow. This is the #1 risk associated with Alzheimer's disease, a lack of blood flow to the brain. And it's really important that we focus on looking at our blood flow. How can we improve this? One of the best things you can do is do more exercise. The NHS recommends 150 minutes of exercise a week. In terms of boosting your blood flow, you should look at doing moderate exercise twice a week plus weight training. Now, if you don't have any weights at home, make sure, have a think about what you could use differently to lift things up and down. Maybe grab some tins from your kitchen and use those to help you with weight training. So making sure that you build up that muscle mass to protect your brain as well. Other things that you can do to help increase blood flow is to look at ginkgo biloba. Sage is proven to improve blood flow. Let me write these things down. So we have exercise. Supplements is ginkgo. Biloba. Sage. Obviously, another key one is diet. So this is not eating high sugar foods that are actually going to cause a lot of inflammation in your body and actually cause a reduction in blood flow. There's also other supplements you can take, in particular omega-3. This includes DHA and EPA, hyperzine, vinpocetine, acetyl L-carnitine. This is all in the Brain Rescue, Memory Rescue book. So I'll just put hyperzine on there. There are more. So the next one associated with the focus on rescuing your mind is retirement and aging. Now, what can we do to reduce the risk of cognitive decline in this space? Well, the key thing here is to focus on new learning. So new learning exercises that you can do, so anything that is literally forcing your brain to learn new things. And the reason that's important is it helps you build new connections in your brain, because as your brain ages, it cuts out the connections that are not necessary. So if you keep your brain active, you keep learning new things, it will continue to build new connections and keep that brain healthy. So focus on the new learning. A language is a good one to do as well. Exercise. So exercise helps generate endorphins, helps generate serotonin and dopamine. Serotonin is associated with mood. Dopamine is associated with motivation. Also helps increase your blood flow. Your blood flow will go up. It also helps with oxygen and glucose supply to your brain. Plus, it protects your brain. So the neurons' response to stress is better, in particular in the hippocampus. And we know that stress can lead to killing brain memory cells in the hippocampus in particular. So new learning and exercise, really important from a retirement and aging perspective. So the question on I is for inflammation. Now, things that can help reduce inflammation: take omega-3 supplements, and also focus on reducing your sugar consumption. Now, you'll note here, at no point here have I mentioned anything to do with drugs. So these are all interventions that you can take for yourself to reduce the risk of cognitive decline. Why am I mentioning that? Well, because we're moving into the world of preventative health that's not really set up at the moment. There's stuff we can do to not end up in the surgery, to not end up in hospital, to not end up in that risk category for Alzheimer's. Stuff we can do personally to take control of our health, and these are the steps that you can take for yourself. So genetics. So if there is a predisposition for Alzheimer's disease, then you need to focus on doing the things that are necessary to reduce your risk. So making sure that you're taking the supplements that will improve the blood flow to your brain, making sure that your diet is supportive of your brain health and it is not destructive. Back here, head trauma. So some of the recommendations for dealing with head trauma, again, goes back to omega-3. Your brain is made up of DHA. A high percentage of it is made up of DHA. And also prebiotics and probiotics. Now, they did a study of NFL players where they had head trauma. This was done in the Amen clinics in the States. It's one of the biggest studies looking at head injuries, and they noticed an improvement in memory from a majority of the players, and that was purely by taking the supplements, doing the exercise, having the appropriate diet. That resulted in significant improvement in their cognitive ability. So you can change your brain, you can recover to a degree from head trauma. You're not stuck with the brain you have, but it's important that you do the things that help your brain and stop doing the things that hurt it. Next things, we talked about toxins. So one of the big issues at the moment in terms of toxins is not the antibiotics or anything that we take personally. It's the stuff they put in our food. It's the stuff that they put in our cosmetics. So there is an app called Think Dirty, which you can download for free off of Apple, that tells you the level of substances in there that are actually really damaging to your health. There's no control over the stuff that they put in cosmetics, which is shocking, really. I know it's taken us a long time to get some colour coding on foods, but there's actually no control on cosmetics. So what you are putting on your skin actually gets into your system. Skin is the largest organ in your body, gets into your system and can affect your brain health. So what to do? Get the Think Dirty app. Oh, that's the wrong colour. Let's go for a blue. Another thing is to make sure you're looking at the cosmetics that you're using and that you're buying ones that are not going to do you harm. If you're less concerned about that, one of the key things is to eat organic. This is So organic, corn-fed, grass-fed meats, and also avoid anything that's mold. Get your house checked for mold, and any obviously toxic exposure of paints, etc. So really important that we don't just think about what we're exposed to from an environmental perspective, but what we actually physically put in our bodies. And they know that there's a huge amount of pesticide residue that now remains on food, and it's important that we minimize that consumption of pesticide. Why is that important? Because pesticides affect our gut health. Our guts are directly connected to our brains, and that will therefore cause some inflammation in our brains. If we're taking on too many antibiotics, if we're antibiotics from the meats that we're consuming, if they're not organic and corn-fed meats, that will really affect our gut, and that has an impact on our brain health. Also, children who have taken a lot of antibiotics when they're younger, their guts will be more leaky, and less. That will then affect our brain health as well. Next one is mental health. Big topic. I think this should be called brain health, as does Dr. Daniel Amen. Now, this is recognising the fact that you have an issue with stress, anxiety, or depression, and looking at ways in which you can cope with that. Now, one of the things, so this is stress coping mechanisms, and there's lots of things you can do to deal with stress. Meditation is one of them, to calm yourself down. Yoga, Tai Chi, anything that's relaxing. Another thing to do is the 2-3-4 breathing technique, which is talked about by Dr. Chakravarti. So you breathe in for 2 seconds, hold for 3, and breathe out for 4. That's a good way to calm yourself down. Really helps soothe yourself. Another thing to do is what we call release meditation technique in high performance coaching, is to breathe in and out for 10 breaths, but as you're breathing out, chant the word release to really calm yourself down. So this is releasing all those negative thoughts, those negative emotions from your body to calm yourself, and that really helps, especially when you're transitioning from one activity to another, or if you feel yourself tensing up. Another thing is to look at happy images, like picture of someone holding a cup of tea, pictures of gloves. There's all sorts of images that bring a sense of comfort, and that can be shown, that's already scientifically shown to reduce stress levels. So mental health is a key part of cognitive decline. Immunity and infections, this includes things like anything to do with herpes, but in particular for the time of year that we're in, we can look at how we can improve our resistance to infections in the winter period. And things that we can take is vitamin D. That also helps with our mood as well, so that's really a good thing to take. Omega-3. Magnesium. And potassium. This is an article that was written by Dr. Daniel Amen on how to look after yourself in the winter months. So if you're not doing that already, then make sure you focus on taking those supplements, and you can also get some of that in health foods. In particular, I love walnuts because it contains Magnesium, I love some magnesium and some potassium as well, so I love to have those, plus it contains omega-3, so it kind of ticks most of those boxes. Next up, neurohormone deficiencies. This includes the effects of your thyroid, anything that you're going through in terms of premenstrual tension or hormone replacement therapy, anything like that, is get yourself checked is the key here to find out whether your hormone levels are optimal. Obviously, when you're breastfeeding, your hormone levels will be different as well. So get your levels checked and make sure that you are being supplemented with the appropriate drugs to make sure your hormones are optimized at the right levels. Next, diabetes. As I said, don't become a dinosaur. Don't let your weight go up and your brain size shrink and reduce the blood flow to your brain purely from being overweight. Focus on doing important things, and we talk about diet, but this is about a lifestyle change. So this is not about going on a diet. This is about eating the right foods to reduce your weight. So avoiding those sugary foods, avoiding those simple carbs, avoiding sweets, cakes, biscuits, white bread, white rice, white pasta, potatoes of a very high glycemic index turned incredibly quickly into sugar, crisps, anything like that. Focus on switching to complex carbohydrates, brown rice, brown pasta, brown bread, or avoid wheat altogether. Focus on the good fats, not the unhealthy fats, and make sure the diet is the most important thing. Creating a lifestyle change in what you eat, and secondary, making sure you do the appropriate exercise. As I said, 150 minutes a week is the minimum amount of exercise the National Health Service in the UK recommend. So finally, the last one is sleep. Now, sleep is really important because actually when you sleep, your brain almost kind of washes itself, so it cleanses itself of the toxins in your head. It's really crucial that we have the right amount of sleep. That's 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Now, if you think you have sleep apnea or your partner thinks you have sleep apnea, do make sure you get it checked out, because if you're not getting the right amount of sleep, that can have a significant effect on your memory. And it's really important that we focus on doing that. Very difficult to do when you're a new mum and breastfeeding, but it's something that you have to focus on and try and catch up with during the day. So what else can we do in terms of helping ourselves from a sleep perspective? So we need 7 to 8 hours per night. The other thing we can do is focus on switching off all electronic devices 1 hour before bedtime. And I know I struggle with this. So nothing on less than an hour before bed. And that will really help you calm your brain down. You can also take things in the evening to calm your brain, like hot milk with some honey in it will really help boost your serotonin, and that will relax your brain to help you have a good night's sleep. So focus on getting those 7 to 8 hours and really turn off those electronic devices. Turn to a book that you can read so that you can really calm your brain down, not stimulating it in the middle of the night. So we talked about what things can you do to reduce the risk of cognitive decline, went through the mnemonic Bright Minds, which, as I said, is from this book Memory Rescue by Dr. Daniel Amen. There's loads and loads of stuff in there. If you read nothing else, read the chapter on blood flow and the introduction to make sure that you're focusing on reducing the risk of Alzheimer's, boosting the blood flow in your brain. As I said, in particular, need to focus on exercise, looking at the diet that you have, making sure you're eating the right foods for your brain, and supplementing with omega-3 and any other supplements that are necessary based on your risk factors. Courage is the next section. So courage. So in this section, I really want to talk about the facts behind you as a person, and thinking in this framework is to help you explore what is really holding you back from showing up as your authentic self. So this is the framework that I use. We look at your emotional, your physical, your mental, and your spiritual health. And the facts mnemonic stands for how you're feeling, the actions you're taking, the thoughts that you're having, and the connections that you're making, the connections you're making to yourself, your purpose, your values and beliefs, and the connections you're making to others. So I want you to make sure you write some of this down. And finally, your surroundings. So I want you to think about, what is it that is holding you back? Normally, it's associated with fear. What areas of your life are you not stepping into being your authentic self? Are you able to express honestly and openly how you feel to the people that are most important to you? Is there anyone who you feel you're not able to express your emotions to? Write the person's name down. What is it you feel you're not able to do? Actions. Are you able to do the things that are important to you, to do the activities that reflect you as a person? So I know for me personally, my big focus at the moment is completing my brain health certification course, and also recertifying as a high performance coach, which will be doing in April. Those actions are really important to me, and I'm really fortunate that my husband is supportive of that, and he's supportive of the things that I want to do. Are you able to do the things that you want to do with your life? Do you know what those things are? So when we think about the doing, we talk about connections. So in terms of courage is showing up as your authentic self, are you able to connect with the people that are important to you? Are you able to connect with those that are able to lift you up, able to move you forward towards your hopes and dreams? Is there anything that's holding you back? Have you got any fears associated with who it is that you want to connect with? And do you feel connected to your own purpose? Do you feel that you're courageously doing what you want to do with your life, that you're able to define your hopes and dreams, that you're able to share those hopes and dreams with the people that are close to you, with those that are important to you, with your friends, your family? Do you feel you have the courage to do that? And finally, are your surroundings helping you? Do you feel you're able to express what you want to change in your surroundings so that they support you as a person, so they reflect your true self? So are you able to decorate the house, for example, to be an extension of you? Are there any of these areas in your life that's holding you back? And what are they? Write those down. What aspect of your life are you not able to be truly authentic as the person that you are and want to be? If you were to rank yourself out of 10, where would you say you're expressing your true feelings? Out of 10, where 10 is I'm fully able to express my feelings and 1 is not at all. What would you rate yourself there? In terms of your actions, again, where 10 is you're able to express yourself fully and do the things that you really want to do. You're fully able to do all the actions that you want to take for yourself personally. Where would you rate yourself? Similarly, for thoughts, are you able to have the thoughts that move you forward? Are you able to be creative, to do the creative thinking, to extend your mind, to do the learning that is important to you, to grow yourself cognitively? This is your mental well-being. Are you able to do that in your life? And how would you rate yourself out of 10 in terms of expressing your thoughts to others? Spiritually, how would you rate yourself in terms of your connection? Are you able to courageously share your purpose, your values and beliefs with others? Are you able to connect with people personally? How would you rate yourself out of 10? You might want to do 2 scores. One is, how are you able to express your purpose to those that are important to you so you can share where you want to go in the world? And secondly, are you able to connect with the people that are important to you to help you fulfill that purpose? And then finally, how would you rate yourself out of 10 in terms of expressing who you are within your surroundings, within your environment? Expression in terms of how you decorate it, in terms of how you dress, how you style your hair, all of that self-expression in your surroundings. Do you feel you're able to be who you want to be? What would you rate yourself out of 10? So once you've done that scoring, the question is, what is it that is holding you back? What is it that you're fearful of? Because courage, the opposite of courage is fear. What fears are coming into your mind that is avoiding you from being that true you? So fears, write them down. Where are your fears in each of these 5 areas? What is it you're afraid of? In high performance coaching, we talk about the fear of loss, that we'll lose something, the fear of the process being too hard, and the fear of the outcome not being any better than it currently is. Do any of those fears come into play? So loss, process, and outcome. What is it that's affecting you in any of these 5 areas? Who is it that is affecting you from showing up as your true self, or you think is affecting you from showing up as your true self? So what I want you to think about then is, if you had no barriers, if you had none of these fears, how would you show up? What would be different? What does that state look like without any of these fears in play? So how would you be showing up in terms of how you feel? Write those feelings down. How would you be showing up in terms of what you're doing? What would you be doing differently that you're not currently doing? Sometimes we build a fear up to be something that it isn't. We fear an outcome being different. Actually, the process of building up this fear is worse than the outcome would ever be. So what is it that you would be doing that you're currently not doing? What is it you'd be thinking? What is it you'd be learning that you're not currently thinking about? Who would you be connecting with? And what would your purpose be different? How would your purpose be different? How would your beliefs be different? Would your values be any different if there were no barriers in terms of how you showed up as your authentic self? And what would your surroundings look like with no barriers in play? No fear, just you, that true you. What would be different for you? And then finally, what steps do you need to take? If your barriers weren't there, what steps do you need to take to kick down those barriers? And is that world that you're writing about with no barriers so that you can be the authentic you, is that world a world that you truly want? Is it a world that someone else is truly holding you back from having? And how can you get there? How do you envisage yourself getting there? What steps do you feel you need to take? If you had your most courageous future self standing right next to you right now and they were coaching you, what would they say to you now? What would they say to you in terms of how you should express your feelings, that you can truly express who you are? What would they say in terms of what you should be doing, how you should be thinking, who you should be connecting with, what your purpose should be and how you express it, and what you need to do in terms of your surroundings? What would they say to you right now? So this is all about courage. Courage, having the courage to really show up as your authentic self. Are you showing up as the authentic you? What does the authentic you really look like in terms of having no barriers, expressing who you truly are, doing what you really want to do, thinking what you know you need to think about, learning what you need to learn, focusing on your purpose, your values, beliefs, connecting with yourself, connecting with those that are important to you, making sure that your surroundings are optimized to help you be your authentic you. So have a think about that in terms of how you can really show up more authentically, because as I said at the beginning, it's much better to be a first-rate version of yourself rather than a second-rate version of somebody else. And that was said by Judy Garland, that quote is from her. So if we go back to the beginning, get the sheets. So this was all about looking at your risk factors associated with cognitive decline. I hope you found that really insightful and helpful, and it's given you something to take away as to how you can improve your brain reserve and make sure that you sit above the line of getting any symptomatic issues. And then finally talked about courage, having the courage to show up as your authentic you, making sure we're thinking about the facts behind your well-being, the facts behind what's holding you back to being your true self, and that you address those in each step to move yourself forward and be that person that you truly want to be. Be you, be your authentic you. So if you have any questions, then please, or comments, please post below, and I will quickly have a look at this now and refresh it on my phone to see if we have any comments coming through. No comments at the moment, so I hope you found that useful. If you have any comments, then please post them and I will address them and reply to them. Next month, I'm going to do a spring clean. This is a spring clean of your mind. I'm also going to talk about how we can deal with overwhelm, and the third part is yet to be decided, so stand by for that. So look forward to talking to you next month in Wellbeing More Monthly. Look after your brain health. Talk to you soon.